Hi everyone, I'm Mork and I make minis in HeroForge. This week's mini that we are looking at is the Witch Doctor from Terraria. The Terraria subreddit seems to make some very special kind of a fan art for the Witch Doctor NPC, so I figured I could do a mini of my own and contribute a little bit. So, we have a Witch Doctor here, and this mini is full of Terraria references. Of course, we have right here the jungle bat, we have here Sluggy, the environment is actually jungle. Here we have a jungle rose. The Witch Doctor is holding nature's gift, or you can also interpret it as Moonglow as well if you want, but I think it would be like a bit of a different color. And we also have glowing mushrooms here, and they are actually glowing. I'm using a light there, and the look that I went for, it's a bit of a hybrid between the shimmered variant and the regular variant of the Witch Doctor. I actually made this mini before they introduced the Witch Doctor portrait. The kind of a fun thing about this Witch Doctor was that it was kind of like up to my interpretation, like to decide like what those pixels mean. But yeah, it was like fun. We added like a lot of gold. He's got war paint on, a lot of embellishments around. He's got the PewDiePie colors, on his loincloth, because why wouldn't he? So let's go back in time and see how it all started. So this was the initial discovery of the Witch Doctor. As you can see, I still have the John HeroForge face on him. But I have the John HeroForge face on him because I wasn't sure if I'm gonna like make like a custom face or if I'm gonna use one of the heads which are uneditable. They're kind of like pre-made and you can't really edit all that much about the head. Just like these like sleek bung grill features or the rounded ribbit features, you can't really change much about those. There's like very little you can actually edit about them. I personally don't really like these heads because you cannot really edit them, but for this mini I did actually use it, and I don't know, I don't know how I feel about them. I don't really like them, to be honest. Like, I think they can be nice. These heads can be nice, especially for like when you're making some sort of a creature, like straight up a dragon, like a beast. I think that's fine, but you just lose a lot of uniqueness from like that sort of a same phase that you have going, like this is the head that I actually ended up using, and you can see that there is not much you can edit about this head whatsoever. I think if I were to remake the Witch Doctor, I would definitely be confident enough to be able to make a good lizard head from scratch. But I wanted to try, I guess, something different back then, so I just went ahead with the draconic features. This is where I was looking for the first parts of the mini. You can see that a lot of these things that I use here, they actually made it into the final result. And I made the guy sit down, enjoying his day, having a swell time. Now this is where I started messing with the tabard, or a skirt, I guess we can call it. And yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about is how am I going to do the skirt, because Witch Doctor is a lizard, or lizard, and he's got a tail. The question was like, do I make some sort of a hole for his skirt, you know, and that's how he wears it, or does he wear like the skirt over his tail? I guess my best guess would be that if I were like a lizard, which I'm not, if I were a lizard and I wanted to have like a loincloth, I guess I would just have it in the front, right? I wouldn't have it in the back as well, because like my hole is already covered in the back by the tail, so I don't need like a loincloth there, right? So you just need the front covered. Yeah, you can see me here experimenting exactly with that, and it just looks freaking nightmarish, you know. I just like, nah, like this looks so painful. So that's why I kind of decided to just like have him have a hole for him in the loincloth. And when I was putting the flower inside of his hand here, I already like imagined that I would be either putting like a moon glow or nature's gift or a jungle rose, you know, as like a direct Terraria reference. More attempts at trying to make this work, and I can't make it work. So in the end, I just kind of like decided to go with this alternative, and essentially there is a hole which allows the tail to poke out of it, and you know, that's bad. I don't really think this is a sort of a detail which a lot of people like look into that much, but if I don't have the hole here, then I'm gonna need to have the hole in the underwear anyway. So, you know, like however we look at things there. Well, actually I could have just removed the underwear from him. No, this guy needs underwear. Look at this, like, because when I made him like sit down, this just looks freaking weird, you know, so I guess he does need to have underwear. So here is where I started the first color exploration for the mini. I knew, because this was like Terraria and, you know, the jungle biome, I already knew it. I wanted to be as colorful as possible and to have as many colors as possible. I was also thinking of making like a Terraria reference for the Tiki totem that the witch doctor sells, which didn't make it in the end. I wanted to add Sluggy here, of course, and yeah, I was just kind of like looking at my options overall. Then I got the idea that instead of just having like this, sort of a golden necklace, I could just kind of have it like go all over, and this is essentially just kit bashed more golden necklaces kit bashed like so, to create this sort of effect. And I believe these only cost 1%. Yep, they cost only 1% to like to add to the mini, so it's just like a pretty cool thing, and that's why I also just kind of went crazy with them on the arm later. Here, you know, I kind of started already, but I went crazy with them here because they're just like 1%, and I kept adding more and more, and I couldn't like stop myself. Now the witch doctor also has nature's gift. The witch doctor seems to have some sort of like a skull, like in this area, I guess. So I added like these 3 skulls there. They are, I believe these are, yeah, it's another necklace, so yeah, but it like kind of fits in rather nicely. And of course, in the sprite, he also seems to have like some sort of a skull on his shoulder. I also like looked up some fan art depictions, you know, for reasons, and one of those reasons was like how other artists decided to portray Witch Doctor. A lot of them just kind of decide to put like this sort of a shoulder piece on both of his shoulders. I kind of decided to do something a little bit different, just put it on one side. I got rid of the totem and I started working on the colors of the staff. I figured it would be kind of appropriate to try to give the stuff a bit of a mahogany color from the jungle, you know. So I don't know if I managed, but yeah, added some wrappings. It looks like in the sprite he's got something purple around him, and I also added these glowing mushrooms, you know. Actually, lore-wise, Witch Doctor doesn't like glowing mushrooms. He doesn't like the truffle guy, so. And more golden necklaces on his arm. I couldn't stop myself. And I kind of just like these sort of wrappings around the arms because I felt like they kind of add additional definition to his muscles. I added a little bit more skulls over here. I tried to color these flowers with a color of the jungle flowers. Like if you look at the jungle flowers in Terraria, most of them, like bushwise and so on, they're kind of like red colored. I believe most of them is because the jungle rose is also red, so it just kind of like fits in nicely with the rest of the stuff. And I added a little companion who is a jungle bat, you know. He's just like hanging out with the witch doctor. I know they wouldn't be on friendly terms, but you know, I can make like an exception. Next thing that I was thinking about was what the heck does even Witch Doctor have? Because his stuff is like a little bit weird. It's not exactly like a staff, it's almost like a scepter or something like that. Like I cannot really define what it is in the sprite. I was trying out these ribbons, but I really wasn't feeling them or like they were the right choice. And also in the sprite you can see that he doesn't really have like a hole here in his stuff. It's more like he's got like a sort of a circular thing, and then it seems like there is like some bones sticking out of it, out of this area, and that's why I just kind of like put in some bone arrows later on. I also added some foliage, so HeroForge added some new plants and stuff, which is pretty cool, except that it also just kind of, it's not as good as I was hoping it would be. Maybe my one complaint about these plants is that if I delete this one, for example, you can see that it's like, it's 3% of kit bashing. But this piece is like not very big, you know, it's not really a big piece, and this sort of a piece feels like a thing that you want to spam around your mini as much as possible because you're, I don't know, maybe you're creating a dryad from Terraria and it just makes sense for you to add as many vines as possible. So I don't really understand why this is like 3%, you know. I think this could be like totally just 2% or even 1% because it's a small piece, man. And I kind of enjoyed like how they're able to like lean against stuff, you know. I made them lean against the stuff, but you know. And I really love these succulents, you know. They're really awesome plants. I believe they cost 5%. Yes, they do cost 5%, but they're really worth it because they're very large and they're also like incredibly flexible. If I like, for example, try to make it bigger, it's still okay that this one doesn't look natural, but this, for example, this still kind of looks pretty natural, even if I squish it a little bit, you know. So you can like add some like very slight variation and it looks pretty natural. So I really enjoy these succulents. I just wish we had more plants like the succulent right here that can make awesome environments, you know. That would be pretty neat. I added the jungle rose, you know, like I was promising to do. And the jungle rose I did actually get rid of in the end, and I replaced it with a rosebud. It's because the jungle rose is also 5% of kit bashing, you know, so I just replaced it with the rosebud, and I believe rosebud is just 1% or 2%, something like that. Lower, essentially. Now here is where I was thinking of adding like a wine, sorry, like a spine whip to the stuff here. And the attempts didn't go so hot, honestly. This was kind of an my best attempt, I guess, at it. It really just doesn't look great, you know. It's a little bit awkward because when you like take it here with kit bashing, you can see that we are missing like some of these thingies here. So you can't really make it as like easy as possible. I guess technically speaking, you could do it something like this and just hide this sort of a part in the wood, but I don't know. I just don't think it was working for what I was trying to do ultimately. Yeah, I guess something like that. But then you have to make sure that it doesn't poke out and stuff, and it just wasn't working. So I decided to do something else, and I switched to the arrows. Actually, I figure like this sort of a stuff at the end of like the bone arrows kind of looks a little bit like the thing that he has in his sprite. So if we like pull it down, we can see that these are arrows indeed, but it's more supposed to look like just like some bone hanging from the stuff, and that is like affected by the gravity. I kind of imagine that like whenever witch doctor like walks, like the bones are like some sort of chimes, or they like make some sort of a sound, or whenever the witch doctor does anything magic related, the bones are like boning. I started working on the face, I guess. I also added like a sort of a tongue for this lizard, you know, make him a little bit crazed looking, and I don't know, you know, maybe some scalies out there are gonna enjoy this more. So here, I kind of just struggled, like, because the thing is that, like, the feathers from the skull model, this is kitbashed, of course, and the hair, which is like lion's mane, they were like clipping a little bit, and just was trying to see what the best solution was. Like, I was still deciding if I didn't want his eyes to be seen, or if I wanted his eyes to be seen. I think I just kind of decided to do it this way because I wanted to show off his lizard-like eyes. Yeah, you can see me here trying a different alternative, but this is looking extremely cursed. I really like the portrait art they did for the Terraria Witch Doctor, but I didn't have that reference yet because the patch wasn't out yet. So you can see me here changing it back to what it was, and I think this looks like significantly better than whatever the other thing was. I was playing a little bit with the decals here. For the war paint that the Witch Doctor has, I didn't decide to use any of the face decals. I'm actually using like a different decal, but we'll get to that. I believe this is the part where I was able to finally see what the what the Witch Doctor portrait was from the new patch, and I was kind of praying that, oh my god, I hope they didn't make him like too different or something like that. And this was almost the final version. You can see, oh, one weird thing about the lizard. Like, it's interesting that Relogic added ears to the Witch Doctor. Because this guy is technically speaking a lizard, right? And lizards don't really have ears. They have like tiny holes in their heads. So that's pretty interesting to me. And like I said, this sort of a hairstyle and like headpiece and like the golden horns is just kind of like a mishmash of things. It's like a mishmash of the regular and the shimmered variant. And this was the absolute final version of Witch Doctor. You can see here that in the end, for the decal, I actually decided to use a decal that is projected. If I remove the headpiece here, you can see that I'm just using like this sort of a decal, but I'm covering up most of it with the headpiece, so it just kind of looks like a war paint, and I felt like this was the closest thing, which looked kind of neat. So I added the ears, of course, and the hair is a bit of a mix, you know. I really like the gradient that I have going on here. It's pretty cool. I decided to change the rose for the rosebud here, so we still have like the jungle rose reference. And what I decided to do was with some free kit bashing, I decided to put I don't know if I should say it. Like, do you see it? Do you see it? I wonder if you do see it. Okay, I'll tell you. So, there is a secret about this bat, and I will be making a tutorial about it later, but because not a lot of people watch my horizontals, what you should know is that I put eyes on top of this bat's eyes. And the reason why is because when you go to the posing, you cannot change the way the animals look in HeroForge. It's a really weird thing. I don't know why we aren't able to edit like where the animal actually looks. Whenever you put any animal in HeroForge, all of them have this like 1,000-yard stare, you know? And it kind of sucks, especially like when you're trying to make a mini that is very connected to their familiar. You lose a lot of like emotional connection between the animal and its guardian. So what I started doing with these animals, I started putting eyes on top of eyes. It looks like 1,000 times more cute, you know? Like, it's 1,000 times more adorable to look at. Oh. And another important thing that I changed a little bit is the lighting. So the mushroom glow is not as prominent. I decided to, instead of making it like a glow, I decided to make it a shadow. If I turn off the lights, it looks like this. If I turn on the lights, the shadow lights with the dark magic, it looks like this. And I think this looks significantly better with the shadows here. It just adds like a lot more. And we painted this dark magic with a blue glow because there are the mushrooms around. The other light that I put is actually located here. And this one also uses dark magic. And this one casts like a teal glow Maybe the steel glow could be moon glow, or it could also be maybe a jungle torch, you know? So we have like this pretty beautiful like shadows here. We have like shadowy part of the witch doctor, and we have a part of witch doctor where he is getting sunned, where he is sunning, as a proper lizard should. And if we disable the steel dark shadow light, it looks like this, much brighter. If we enabled it, it looks like this. I like it much more with the dark magic. I think it like adds a bit more atmosphere to the mini. And for like the portrait, I kind of like did that today actually. I don't know. I think the portrait is a little bit uninspiring. I mean, there's just some sun and some trees in the background. I'm gonna like in the future move away from these backgrounds, and I'm gonna be using like straight up just black background. But yeah, we're just rolling with what we're rolling for now. And yeah, I guess that's honestly it for the Witch Doctor. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, let me know. Let me know what you liked, what you disliked, what you were feeling, what you weren't feeling. And yeah, thank you for watching. Take care and bye bye.